Chinese Navy is a little too aggressive for its own good. A CCP-linked group is trying to elect this guy as New York City's next mayor. And Trump's chip wars with China are getting really weird. And more on this week's China News headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. This episode is sponsored by Incogni. You probably know that companies are collecting your personal data, but you may not realize just how many. Dozens, maybe hundreds, most of which you've never heard of, and you have no idea what they're doing with it. Incogni helps stop them. I'll explain more at the end. Earlier this week, a Chinese Coast Guard ship and a PLA Navy destroyer were both attempting to chase and corner a Philippine Coast Guard patrol boat in the South China Sea. It was near the Scarborough Shoal. But instead of stopping the Filipino boat, the two Chinese ships stopped each other in a spectacular way. Reportedly, the Chinese Coast Guard vessel was so badly damaged it was put out of commission. Some of the Chinese Coast Guard crew were quite possibly killed in the collision. Not that China will ever admit that. From the footage, it looks like the PLA Navy destroyer doesn't even try to help the Chinese Coast Guard ship, but just keeps following the Philippines vessel instead. That's cold. At least the Philippines offered to help.
We have medical personnel on board. Should you need any assistance, we are willing to provide assistance.
And this is how the Philippines is fighting back. They don't have a big Navy or Coast Guard, and they don't want a war with China. So they're fighting back with political warfare. They shoot video of everything that happens and release it to the international press, whether it's this week or past incidents like China spraying them with water cannons or starting a skirmish with axes. This is how you fight a bully, by having the courage to show what they're doing to you. This was a big blow to the Chinese Communist Party because as wrecked as the Chinese ship was, the thing most damaged was their pride. Two Chinese ships crashed into each other, and they couldn't exactly blame it on the Philippines. What's that, Shelley? Never mind, they totally can. Days after the crash, my favorite state-run media, Global Times, tried to blame the Philippines for the crash by showing an edited video that left out the PLA Navy vessel. They tried to make it look like the Filipino ship was the one making dangerous moves instead of just trying to evade the Chinese ships chasing it. In fact, the Global Times tried to blame both the Philippines and the United States, even though the US wasn't involved at all. But because the Philippines was able to get their footage out first that showed the real story, the CCP wasn't able to dominate the narrative, just like they weren't able to dominate the ocean. Just prior to that, shall we say, boating accident, the CCP had tried to put Filipino President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in hot water by intentionally misrepresenting his comments on Taiwan. Here's what Marcos actually said.
Not want to go to war, but I think if there is a war over Taiwan, we will be drawn. Hihilain tayo sa aya't gusto natin. Kicking and screaming. We will be drawn and dragged into that mess.
Notice how he said the Philippines doesn't want war and feels like it would basically be forced into it? Pretty straightforward, right? Even threw in the kicking and screaming visuals to really paint the picture. But that wasn't good enough for the CCP, oh no. Because I guess saying they don't want war is clear reverse psychology that translates to bring it on. The CCP accused Marcos of playing with fire, which I'm sure has nothing to do with the fact that he said this on a trip to India, one of China's rivals. Marcos responded by saying, "We are, I think for propaganda purposes, misinterpreted. I'm a little bit perplexed why it would be characterized as such, playing with fire." What he should have said was, well, at least playing with fire is better than playing with boats. Speaking of regional rivals, Taiwan is investigating 16 Chinese firms for poaching high-tech talent. This is super important since the computer chip industry is the lifeblood of the Taiwanese economy. And naturally, that makes it a prime target for the CCP. Taiwanese law bars Chinese investment in certain parts of their semiconductor supply chain for obvious reason. Because Taiwan is a country with its own laws. So the 16 firms under investigation have been accused of all sorts of skullduggery to set up offices in Taiwan, including faking business registrations, using shell companies out of Hong Kong, and dispatching staff through local hiring agencies, all to snag Taiwanese high-tech workers. The This is such a flimsy disguise. I hope they were also wearing fake mustaches and had ID that listed their residence as not China. But the CCP isn't just trying to sneakily take people out of Taiwan, they're also trying to sneakily get spies in. And by spies, I mean Chinese electric cars. Under current Taiwanese law, importing fully assembled vehicles from China is illegal. And vehicles that are assembled on the island can only have so many parts from China, since China will put a microphone and camera in just about anything. Do you really want the CCP listening on you, singing along to Pink Pony Club when you think you're alone? But Taiwanese media have reported that China's BYD has a plan. They'll assemble the Chinese cars in Thailand and then ship them to Taiwan. It's the equivalent of trying to scooch in under a cardboard box in Metal Gear. Fortunately, Taiwan isn't stupid, so they're moving to ban Chinese car imports from third countries. I hope the CCP doesn't find other ways to get its vehicles on the island. And after the break, a CCP group wants this guy to run New York City. Welcome back. The Jews for Zoran Mamdani group has been tied to the niece of lefty China-based billionaire Neville Roy Singham. We've covered him before in his connections to various pro-Palestinian protests across the US, as well as his ties to the CCP. But this is a new twist. Zoran Mamdani, the Democratic Party candidate for mayor of New York City, has made pro-Palestine statements, which hasn't exactly made him friends among Democratic Jewish lawmakers, or Jews in general. So to counter that and get them on board with Mamdani, the organization Jews for Radical and Economic Justice launched Jews for Zoran. And Singham's niece, Alicia Singham Goodwin, is the political director for Jews for Radical and Economic Justice. So while Singham supports pro-Palestine protests, his niece is busy trying to get American Jews on board with the same sentiment. Subversive. Meanwhile, Singham Goodwin's mother, Roy Singham's sister, Shanti Singham, has her own ties to China. She's the journalism department chair at the state-controlled East China Normal University in Shanghai, and has promoted Confucius Institutes in Africa. So, what can we make of all this? Well, the pro-Palestinian movement in the US causes chaos, while Mamdani is the current poster child for American socialism, and both chaos and socialism in the US are good for China. So, well played, CCP. The war over advanced computer chips is getting weird. Under President Biden, the U.S. banned the export of the most powerful computer chips to China, including chips designed for AI learning. There were obvious national security risks. So to slide under the ban, NVIDIA designed the slightly less powerful H20 chip for the China market. But then Trump took office, and he considered banning the H20 as well after learning that China's DeepSeek AI had been using them. And then Trump changed his mind and gave NVIDIA the green light to sell China the H20. And then, Trump being Trump, he demanded they pay 15% of chip sales to the US government. The White House isn't commenting on the matter, though if they did comment, it would be along the lines of ka-ching! Because making money from trade surely makes the security issues go away. But then in a twist, Chinese state-run media says the NVIDIA H20 chips are not actually safe for the country and could pose security concerns, and that China totally doesn't want them, saying they might spy on us, that's what we do. I mean, would do, I mean wouldn't do, how dare you? Okay, what State-Run CCTV actually said was that the H20 chips could have security backdoors. Also, weirdly, that the H20 chips are also not technologically advanced or environmentally friendly, as if those things were ever problems for China. Further complicating the NVIDIA thing is a Reuters article that came out a couple days later about a slightly different issue. It claims 2 anonymous sources said the U.S. embeds trackers in AI chip shipments to catch diversions to China. Not the H20 chips, but more advanced chips. This would mean the U.S. is tracking advanced AI chips sold around the world to make sure they don't end up in China, because it's illegal for those advanced U.S. chips to be sold to China. Here's the thing, we don't know if this is true. NVIDIA denied it. No one could corroborate the claims. But true or not, it just makes the whole thing more complicated. But I, for one, would be happy if the trade deal fell apart. Why are we selling computer chips to China in the first place? Trying to make money by trading with China over the last several decades is precisely how we've enabled the world's largest authoritarian regime to crush its own people and threaten America. What, so if we don't sell them chips, China will just make its own chips? Sure, have at it. They already make electric vehicles so well. Or maybe China can use its homemade chips for sea navigation. Now, Chris, you may be thinking, how do you manage to deal with all the news while staying sane? I have a secret to my phenomenal mental health, which I'll show you in just a moment. But first, this episode is sponsored by Incogni. Whenever you do anything online or use apps on your phone, there are tons of companies that collect your personal data. I'm talking name, phone number, social security number, home address, and more. When I signed up for Incogni 3 years ago, I discovered there were dozens of data brokers that potentially had my private information without my permission. This was terrifying. So what did I do? I've been getting as many of these companies as possible to delete my data from their systems. I did it using Incogni, and you can too. Incogni has already gotten my details removed from 718 of these data brokers who've collected my info. And I didn't have to do anything after signing up. Incogni just handles it. And now you can help your family get rid of their data on the internet too with Incogni's new Family Unlimited plan. It gives you access to Incogni's custom removals feature, where if you find a people search site that's giving out your info, paste that link into Incogni and Incogni's agents will get rid of it for you. So get Incogni and reclaim your own data. Go to incogni.com/uncensored and use the code uncensored to get 60% off an annual Incogni plan. Get your personal data off the market with Incogni. And so what is my secret to staying calm and centered in a chaotic world? Meditation. And the best form of meditation is playing horror games. Click here to see a whole video I made about that on my other channel, Gamers Unbeaten. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thank you for watching China Uncensored.